This story was shared by Borromeo Leyva on the 11th of November 2006 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in his quiet home in Palmdale, California. Coincidentally, this day is also Veterans Day. The dates, names, locations, their spelling and sequence of events below are all based on Borromeo's memory and were not referenced to any historical documents for accuracy. A Filipino war veteran's story. Borromeo recalls. The Japanese occupation of the Philippines during World War II had been a defining segment of his life, which had a great influence on the person that he became. He was about 17 years old when he was a member of the Reyes Regiment, a guerrilla unit composed mainly of men from Ligtong, Cavite Province, Philippines. He witnessed the Japanese army's cruelties to his countrymen. Their rifles affixed with long bayonets, they inhumanely and heartlessly killed many local people that he knew. They would throw infants up in the air and would catch them by the end of their sharp bayonets. Men, especially, had to quickly learn when to run fast and away to live. Usually the Japanese army would gather up the townspeople at their local church, separate, and then kill the men. It seemed to him that their mission was to eliminate the Filipino race, about 18 million in population then. One morning, as the Japanese army came to gather the men, he just ran away and fast. He knew another person, and to his disbelief to this day, why he did not run away as he did. The Japanese army captured him. They roped and hanged him from the mango tree, and with their bayonets, they ended his life. As their lives were threatened, Borromeo's family left the city and temporarily adapted their lives from the protection of the thick jungles and distant mountains, where the Japanese army was fearful to venture into. The next problem they had to deal with was the lack of food, and then there was the malaria illness spreading around. Borromeo was always hoping and waiting about when the Americans would come back to help. The year was 1943. In his guerrilla unit, the Reyes Regiment, mostly untrained fighting men. They were there not to know who the other people were. It was not to make friends with others. They just happened to be together, wanting to fight and survive. However, he could still remember 3 men. They were about 5 or 6 years older than him. He remembered their names: Pablo Molina, Teodoro Molina, and Bonifacio Buenviaje. He remembered them because they were in the Reyes Regiment, and later he got to be with them again when he was at Camp Murphy in Quezon City, now known as Camp Aguinaldo, as a member of the 3rd Replacement Battalion. He would consider them to be his buddies during the war. It also was at Camp Murphy in Quezon City where I was processed and discharged as a guerrilla and continued to be enlisted in the U.S. Army. I was then transported to Camp Alabang Rizal of the U.S. Army. I later met up with these 3 men again. Somehow being from Ligtong, Cavite Province kept us together. The U.S. Army training in Camp Alabang was far different from what I learned in my guerrilla days. We had the privilege to be trained by U.S. Army officers on what there was to know about combat. We got trained in guns like the carbine, Thompson, Garand, 50 caliber submachine gun, and 60 ml trench mortar. I was issued at first a Garand and later a carbine. There I became part of the 29th MP Company of the U.S. Army. It was the 29th MP Company that was assigned special training and was also known as Special Forces, with the intention to be sent and to take the war back to Japan. There were about 150 Filipinos in the 3 platoons I was a part of at the 29th MP Company, the U.S. Army, when we boarded one of the many U.S. transport ships headed to Japan. There were amphibious vehicles also on board to allow for our invasion operation. Our company stayed at the deck of the ship, and not much has happened during that time, as we were just waiting for further orders. We knew our mission, that was to go to Japan, and we were even eager to give them back the destructive war they made us suffer. We were confident. We were certain we can give them back a good fight. But with the millions of Japanese people also ready and willing to die for their country, we were fully aware in that mission that we were surely to die. Before reaching Japan, The atomic bomb was dropped at Hiroshima on August 6th, and then another at Nagasaki on August 9th. Instead of going to Japan, our ship took us to Ilocos Sur in northern Luzon, Philippines, where we were temporarily stationed. We moved to Los Baños, Laguna, and it was there that the 11th U.S. Airborne Division parachuted to join us. The 29th MP Company that I was a member of had a new mission. It was to hunt the Hukbalahaps Supreme Commander, named Luis Taruk, operating in central Luzon. It was already feared from national radio broadcasts that the communist-supported Hukbalahaps had the capacity to overthrow the Philippine government. The sad part was that they were also getting popular support from the civilian population. The Americans at the time were also uncertain of the future of the Philippines. We never did capture Luis Taruk, although we got close on getting him. But a woman hid him under her saya, which is a large and long skirt she was wearing. The 29th MP Company open-field fierce fights took place in many cities and provinces such as Tarlac, Santa Ana, Guaga, Lubao, Nueva Ecija, Pulilan, Bulacan, and Pampanga. Fighting in Guagua took my cousin Leyva's life. Many soldiers who knew me were worried and thought that it was me that got killed. Fighting in Pulilan, Bulacan was so deadly that many soldiers in our ranks left the fight. It was difficult fighting against co-Filipinos. It was also difficult because the Hukbalahaps were getting constant civilian support. As an example, the civilians would ring the church bells upon our arrival to their city. The loud bell rings were intended to warn the Hukbalahaps to get ready for us. At this time, it was hard to distinguish the Hukbalahaps from the civilians. In the province of Pampanga, we had deadly fights against communist Hukbalahaps in the cities of San Luis, Arayat, Candaba, Mexico, and Florida Blanca. In the city of Arayat, we teamed up with the Skull Unit led by Colonel Napoleon Valeriano, who fiercely commanded operations and combats against the Hukbalahaps. Skull Unit has been known for their aggressiveness and fearlessness, with a kill or get killed attitude. As such, they were feared by the Hukbalahaps. I remembered almost having drowned in the waters of Candaba as we were ordered to keep on moving forward, regardless of the condition and situation. Another deadly encounter was in Mexico, Pampanga, where we were engaged in an open field fighting. We had to drop down to the muddy ground to take cover from enemy fire, but Soldier Gaudioso chose to fight back on his knees. Without cover and an easily visible target, he was hit and he died. In San Luis, Pampanga, as our companies were evacuating out, the Hukbalahaps led by Luis Taruk ambushed the jeep of the operations officer of another company not from the 29th MP Company. And in Florida Blanca, Pampanga, it was here that I got shot. My platoon was assigned to one detachment. In all, our strength was about 36, already including officers and cooks. The local people, pretending to provide support services, we later found out, were also gathering intelligence against us, making lists of our names and ranks, and passing them to Hukbalahaps, led by a man nicknamed Commander Linda BIE, camped and hiding in the nearby mountain. This Commander Linda BIE successfully gathered and billed a very large number of fighting men, and fully armed, they started a plan to attack us. We were already feeling the coming danger. One of our soldiers got the information about this plan to attack us. We called for support, and this became a major army operation. Many other companies converged to this city of Florida Blanca, Pampanga. Future Philippine President, at that time Secretary Ramon Magsaysay, also arrived on location and was actively coordinating the military operations. On January 29, 1949 at 1 a.m., we got the order to raid Mount Bukaran, the mountain where Commander Linda BIE and his large forces were positioned and waiting. The Hukbalahaps' tall mountain was the more advantageous position compared to the lower hills that our troops were staging. The distance between us and the Hukbalahaps was not far. It was only a small valley that separated us. My platoon was assigned with the heavy equipment. I was carrying the 30 caliber machine gun tripod. I mounted the machine gun on the top of the hill. I was the assistant machine gunner. CPL Benjamin Toledo was the main machine gunner. We can't see the Hukbalahaps. We were just looking towards that mountain. At about 6 a.m., both sides were quiet and waiting. There was no sound. There was no firing. Then, from the other not-too-distant hills where other soldiers were positioned, the firing and fighting was exchanged. I can see that they were taking casualties, and now the fighting also got to us. The Hukbalahaps machine guns started to continuously storm us all. I can tell from the distinctive noise of their guns that they were using the Japanese woodpecker machine guns. I can tell they had many machine guns. Firing was coming from anywhere and everywhere, and we can't see them. We returned fire with our machine gun. Now the Hukbalahaps machine guns were directed mostly just at our platoon. We became their priority target because we had the heavy equipment. Our platoon started taking most of the heavy fires. My main machine gunner, CPL Benjamin Toledo, had to seek cover behind the hill's slope, letting go of the machine gun he was operating. I took over the machine gun instead, and in front position, fired and continued to fight back. I got hit on the left leg. The pain was severe, and I can tell that I was badly hit. In all, the fighting lasted for 3 days. I was pulled out downhill. I was then taken to the first station hospital, Campo Leyvas, Pampanga. I received hospital treatment and later recommended to be transferred to V. Luna General Hospital, Mandaluyong, Rizal. I was declared for complete physical disability discharge on September 27, 1949. In 1952, Secretary Ramon Magsaysay, in his personal request, recommended me for an office employment position at the Philippine Navy in Cavite Province. Many people just had to wonder what made me be known by such a highly respected and important person. World War II story of Borromeo I. Leyva, November 4, 1925, July 8, 2010, World War II, veteran.